Penelope. So, May has been an incredible month thematically as we've looked at, if you look on the banners or on either side of the room, and the topic of creativity. And I started out the month by suggesting or pointing out the fact that creativity really is not about talent. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the innate energy or the beingness of simply what we are. We are creative beings. And in the degree of ownership of that as our essential self, the degree by which we own the truth that we are creative beings, then that creativity expresses freely. To the degree that we sort of sequester that or cover that or veil that is the degree in which it sort of trickles out. But to the degree that we unabashedly open up and accept that is the degree in which it pours forth. And so the influence that we have in human form, in our human state, then permeates the rest of the world, and we collaborate in this divine energy of creativity. So we've looked at all of that, and it's really not about learning how to do it or obtaining it. It's always about simply remembering that that's what we are. And as we move into the finality of this month and this traditional weekend that is called Memorial Day, I wanted to pause for a moment and invite you to consider the etymology or the origin of the word memorial, which is also memory. But if you look at the Latin root of this word, it actually means mindful. Memorial or memory means to be remembering mindfully. And so when we reflect upon those in this tradition of who have served us, we do so from a mindful remembrance of the fact that we stand where we stand, we are who we are because of those who have come before us. And the influence, the vibration, the lessons, all of the examples that were given us, the freedoms that we have, that we don't take those for granted, but we stop and we pause and we open up into this expansive, creative sense of energy and gratitude for all that is and all that avails us. Because in the human world, in the human experience, not everyone experiences that. In fact, last weekend when I was in Portland, I was actually on the same rail system as the two men who were stabbed yesterday to death. And as I think about that, it gives one pause to reflect upon the fact that Memorial Day, which is honoring the death of individuals, that we have to look at what does death really mean? What does death symbolize? And so I want you to consider for the moment and think about, where did the definition of death come from? So we have to go way, way, way back. We have to go to the Cro-Magnon, portion of Homo sapien, and imagine that we've been engaged with something that had life, and all of a sudden that thing doesn't move anymore. We don't have language, we don't speak, we just kind of grunt and we kick and we go, ugh, and the thing doesn't respond. And so we begin to register this idea that life has exited from this thing. And what we know is that that's a very limited understanding, because life transitioned and spirals and moves and is eternal. It's not bound by the casing of human form. And so in understanding that, then we have the opportunity to do a reframe around death, because death symbolizes the law of impermanence. The law of impermanence teaches us that nothing lasts in human form. But nothing dies either, because death is an illusion. It just moves into an expanded and a broadening sense of beingness. So death then is the ultimate renewal. Probably the greatest thing that we achieve in human form is death. Death becomes an act of mastery. Death then is the thing where we leave the casing, we leave the structure, we leave the form, we leave the bindedness, and we move into something that is immeasurable. That's an act of mastery. We're taught to mourn that, But in the broader spiritual sense, we can actually look and celebrate that, because death then is a rebirth on all levels of being. The symbology of death is the deliberate and the conscious cutting out of things which have become dead, heavy, and stagnant. It's the cutting away of excess. So when I go back to memorial, the root, mindful, it isn't then just a weekend, is it? That Mindful Day or Memorial Day is actually something that we aspire to in its constancy. That every 24-hour capsule of human time is the opportunity for us to practice mindfulness. And that in those 24-hour capsules, there is a consistency of dying. We are continuously dying. Not in the traditional definition, but we are dying to an old paradigm. We are dying to an old thought. We are letting go of, we are cutting the cord of things that are no longer applicable to us in the realm of thought. And that becomes mastery. So this whole idea of mindfulness then is the thing that moves us and it propels us into the deliberate way in which you and I are here to do and to be and to have our being. In this idea of creativity, today's lesson was about from planning to action. It's an interesting thing. If you've ever been a part of committees, planning is just where everybody goes to die. The literal death, the literal definition, you know? And so planning, when you think about planning and the essence of planning, I just want you to stop for a moment and ask, where is your attention in that moment? Towards what? Something in the future, right? And there are those of us, unbeknownst, we don't have to be a part of a committee, we're in our own mental committee, that are constantly planning. And this is how it looks like. I will do this when. I will take care of myself when the kids are gone. I will save money when the debt is over. I will do all of these things. And so there is a postponement in planning when you really look at from the spiritual lens. From planning to action means that I move into a state of mindfulness where I realize, just as Jean was talking in the opening prayer about the fact that all of that is already here. The action then from my being, as I practice this mindfulness, as I let death dissolve my disbelief, is I step into the energy and the acceptance of the renewal of that which is here. And I honor that. That becomes the mindful way by which I don't live in postponement energy. I live in the celebration of everything that I need is here. Everything that I long to be, I already am. And that does take some practice, particularly when we've been conditioned in a human form that tells us the opposite, that we must plan. Now here's the tricky part. Yes, we are still human beings, but we are spiritual beings first. We are spiritual beings who made this crazy agreement to come into human form and have this experience, which means we went from action-oriented as a state of being into the density of planning. So we all have calendars, and we all have day planners, and we all have all these things that are positioned in the human illusion of time. And we're like, well, I'll get to it when. But I want to encourage you today, in Mindful Day, Memorial Day, Mindful Day, for us to take the invitation to begin to step away from that. To begin to understand that what is available to us is not futurized, it's here, and it is our responsibility to become accepting of that. So every once in a while, I find something that seems to strike a nerve with people. It's a particular topic, you know, and when I present it, there's a lot of feedback, whether it's live or whether it's through social media, and it's always interesting to gauge those things. And it happened recently because I came across a quote from a man named Doug Boyd. I didn't know who Doug Boyd was, so I Googled him. And he was a travel writer in the 90s and the early 2000s, and most of his writings were centered around mystical travel. And he had this quote that really made me smile, and he said, the most powerful mantra that you can speak is, I'm available. And then he followed it with, look out. Because if you're sincere, then your whole world begins to change. And I love that part, if you're sincere. In other words, if you mean it when you say, I'm available, then things begin to happen. There is a shift. And so I talked about that a little last week when I was in Oregon at the CSL there near Portland. And I also used that as a part of a corporate keynote that I gave outside of near Bend, Oregon. And without fail, people came up to me, just rushing up to me with all of this energy saying, I'm available. David tried to say it was more like a Tom Jones thing where they wanted to throw their clothes off, but I said, no, it was a spiritual thing. So I want you to think about, not Tom Jones, I want you to think about the energy of saying to universal law and understanding the reciprocal nature of universal law. When you say, I'm available, then what happens? Portals open. Resistance begins to dissolve. An energy of allowing is then allowed. It's opened. It's drawn forth. And everything that has been an excuse begins to dissolve and move away. I'm available. And as I began to talk about that, I realized that there had to be some specificity to that. Because by just simply using the mantra, I'm available, and not really understanding what it is that you truly want and desire or what is important to you, is very much like picking up a bow and an arrow and just sort of shooting around. There's no aim to it. Can you imagine if you were in archery class and you're just like doing this, right? And everybody be ducking. You know, I'm available. Boom, 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 and it's going all over the place. But the finesse of being an archer is that you get specificity. You have to know what it is that you're claiming and affirming that you're available to or for, correct? And so when you become defined by that, then you are in right alignment with that energy, and you can truly say that, and things do. Look out, because things begin to shift. So how do you get to the specificity of that? How do you move from just planning or wishing or hoping to taking action and aiming towards the things that you've long held in your heart and said that you wanted to be a part of? And I know of no other way for me personally than becoming clear about what your values are. I always am talking about this. If I were to come up to you and I'd say, tell me your values, what I mean by that is I want you to be able to articulate, give me 5 words of the things that most are enduring, most are passionate, most keep you anticipatory in terms of life and excitement and joy. What are those things that call you? And when you understand what your values are, then, as I was saying last week in Oregon, I said, pretend like you take that word. Like, for me, self-awareness will always be one of my values. Self-awareness could mean spirituality to you. It could mean consciousness, whatever that word is. But when I think about self-awareness, I realize there's no finish line with that. I realize that that's a enduring forever journey. That even as I spiral up, and even as I have aha moments, and even as I feel as though I've learned something new, that there is always something more to learn. And as you've heard before, the most dangerous words that we could ever say is, oh, I know that already. Because we realize to have self-awareness as a value means that that journey does not stop. That curiosity then plays into our daily lives, that the commitment to being in awe is always there. Self-awareness then, the root of memorial, mindful, means that that becomes a value to me. So it's like I write that on my hand. I write self-awareness on my hand, and I put that up there, and I say, I'm available. I aim towards that. And just like Doug Boyd said, be careful. Because if I'm sincere about choosing self-awareness as a value, then things will begin to change. Structures will begin to crumble. Attitudes that no longer serve who and what I am will begin to dissolve. And all of the things that are compatible to the energy of saying I'm available will begin to pop up. For me, philanthropy, the idea that there are people out there in this world who have the mindset, the consciousness to say, in my giving, I want my giving to be at the forefront of my value system. And I know that by doing that, that what I need to get to live and to be comfortable and to live a good life will be handled. So philanthropy has become one of my values, particularly as I look at my work in the world and my passion about global education. I want to be able to do that and not be concerned about the dense energy and the fear around money. I want to be able to know that whatever possibilities are there philanthropically, that I'm in alignment with that. So philanthropy is one of my values. So when I write it down, I look at it and I say, I'm available. All of the excuses as to why I can't do something begin to dissolve. And I get to pay attention to that. And I get to say yes to that. And I get to look at where I feel restricted about certain things and opportunities. And I go, no, this is a part of my value system. And as I say yes to that, suddenly it's as if all of the portals of creativity open and things I hadn't even thought of, alliances that I didn't even realize were there, suddenly make themselves revealed to me. And you start to see how this works, because in my mindfulness of understanding I must live, we must live by values. And when we say I'm available, things happen. Things happen. And so we have to understand if that's truly important for us. You know, action is an amazing thing. Because action then gives us the ability to go and to meet the mystery. And so many times we are afraid of the mystery. And the more that I think and I've talked about mystery all along, but here's the thing about being available and open to self-awareness. I start to realize that the definition of mystery actually might not even be accurate from the spiritual perspective, because again, it's all created, right? So it's not really mysterious so much as it's yet to be revealed inside of me. Because we say creation is already there. That the wisdom, the inherent wisdom is already there. So there's not really any mysterious. It's just it hasn't come to me in the physical form yet. But as I go and I meet it, as I go and willingly embrace it, it shows itself to me. And so as I began to look at moving more into action and less into planning, you start to see the fact that one of the things that is required for us is to understand that we live in paradox. We live in paradox. And so I was thinking about mindfulness and the type of person that is mindful. And I am reminded in our teaching often how we talk about being a mystic. Do you understand what a mystic is? There's a difference between having a mystical moment and being a mystic. A mystical moment is that moment when all separation dissolves and you are completely and totally aware that everything is connected. All of us, I think, to some degree, have had a mystical moment. Particularly when we were children and we didn't have all of the cynicism built up, and there were these awarenesses. You know, sometimes people tell me that when they were a child, they remember playing in the yard and staring into the face of a flower, and all of a sudden they just lost all track of time. Or sometimes when we've been in the room where a child has been born, and there's this complete and utter joy. And all of a sudden, all of the hatred and all of the anger and all of the angst dissolves for a brief moment, and we are just filled with rapturous love. Those are types of mystical moments where we understand fundamentally that everything is connected. But a mystic is someone who sustains that. So it isn't just a mystical moment. Being a mystic means that the lifestyle is the constancy of the awareness of all connection at all times. And so Edward Viljoen, my friend, who wrote a new book out called Ordinary Goodness, said there are 3 characteristics to being a mystic. Number 1 is the idea of paradox. Is that we consider the fact that life is nothing but a paradox, we notice that everything appears to be part of one unity, yet life contains many opposites. Everything is united, yet life is made up of endless polarities, such as good and bad, hot and cold, and so on. Mystics sense that things are not immediately what they appear to be, and that focusing on the pairs of opposites distracts them from the experience of unity. They understand that reality is larger than the polar opposites that make it up. Reality with a capital R is larger than the polarity that seems to make it up. So the idea first and foremost then about being a mystic or being mindful or being in this action place of saying constantly, I'm available, is the understanding that paradox is happening all around us. It just is. That's a part of the human experience, right? And so as we look at the thing that we want to label as bad, what then becomes the requirement? That I know that that's the veil. The Hindus call it Maya. As I look beyond the veil of that illusion, I understand that infallibly there is this energy of goodness. There is only intelligence. There is only one thing that is ever happening. It is the energy of life itself. It is source. It's what this philosophy is built upon. You know, and you hang around here long enough, and a couple of things are going to happen. You're either really going to lean into your mystical nature, or you're just going to keep getting irritated. Because the message doesn't change. The message doesn't change. You know, we don't, you know, the theme for 1 year is we're all God, and then the next year, well, maybe some of us are God. The theme doesn't change. The message doesn't change. Ancient wisdom doesn't change. This is ancient wisdom. This is Rosicrucianism. This is all of these things bundled up for us in modern day theology. And as we look at this and as we understand this, it isn't anything new. But isn't it interesting, as a species, we still stumble with this? We still reject this. We still become at the mercy of the paradox, when the real fundamental lesson is to be able to look at all worldly effect and understand that God is present. That's what a mystical experience is. That everything is connected. So what's my responsibility to that? It is to see, know, express, be, all of that in every moment of my interaction. What end of the spectrum do I want to exhibit in terms of my behavior and in terms of my thought and my language? Am I contributing to the positive nature of that, or am I defaulting? Am I defaulting to the illusion of separation? And we're an interesting breed, I tell you, because now in this realm of the pocket of existence, we have this thing called social media, which didn't exist, 15, 20 years ago? And now it's consumed so many people's time that they sit there and debate and repost, thinking that somehow that's contributing to the good of the planet. Your reshare does not contribute to the good of the planet. Particularly if all that you're doing is perpetuating the illusion. I'm sorry. That's not activism. Activism, action, is living it. And that's what a mystic does. If you want to remain sick and inflamed, then be in the inflammation energy. But if you want to achieve and allow that which is whole to come and perpetuate itself in physical form, then live from wholeness. Live from the mindset of wholeness. That doesn't mean that you don't turn your back on people. It means that what we do is that we assist those people who haven't yet remembered that for themselves. It doesn't mean that we sit and stare at our navel and go Om all the time. But it means that we take the mystical understanding of connection and we go into the field. We go into the field of opportunity among humanity, and we live by example, and we give by example, and we build by example, and we nurture by example, and we express compassion by example. And that's a part of what mystical living is. That's what mindfulness is. We are memorializing then the understanding of ancient wisdom. We are remembering mindfully what it means to live and to breathe and to have our being as a part of that which is source. That's what Memorial Day is every single day. The second part of being a mystic is having a personal, intimate relationship with the concept of divinity. What does it mean to have an intimate relationship with divinity? What does it mean to have an intimate relationship? To have an intimate relationship means that there is sacred communication. There is sacred acceptance. There is an even exchange of energy, where time and love, the consumption of everything that is a part of the honoring of each other is there. And so to be a mystic means that I am in that intimate relationship with the divine, no matter what is going on in my humanness. So in other words, when things seem to crumble, when there seems to be something within the physical activity, the human component of my life that starts to fall and to erode, I don't blame God, because I'm in an intimate relationship with that which is the divine. I understand that whatever is happening to me, I get to reframe and say, why is this happening for me? What is the thing that is propelling me in order to be with this? What lessons are available to me? Because you see, we are always calling things forth. The calling forth is the inner propulsion, the desire inside of us. And by law, the reciprocal action is bringing that to me. If I say, I'm available, then sometimes the thing that seems oppositional with that comes up in order for me to go, I don't want that, because I want to be available. Remember, love brings up everything unlike itself. If I say, if love is one of my values, and I shout out to that love, I'm available, then sometimes everything unlike love shows up. For you and I to have integrity and meaning behind that value. If I say that philanthropy is a value and I'm available, sometimes the funds aren't there. And I go, who do you think you are to call yourself a philanthropist? And then all of a sudden I realize that philanthropy is much beyond just the energy exchange of money. It's that sometimes it's time and attention. Sometimes it's the giving of everything that you might have in that moment, which might not be money. But it's understanding that without fail, I'm in a constant, intimate relationship with the divine. And lastly, the third quality among mystics, especially the modern mystic, which we all are, we're modern mystics, right? Is that we're able to see, yes, the bigger picture. We're able to embrace the paradox. Yes, we understand the close personal relationship with divinity. And nevertheless, you and I continue to live in this world. In other words, we still have to pay bills. In other words, we still have families to raise. We still have jobs to deal with. We still have problems to solve. The modern mystic still sometimes gets sick. The modern mystic sometimes still gets and feels disappointment. Sometimes the modern mystic really screws up. But in all of that, in all of the density of that human effect, not once is there a belief or a faltering in the idea that I'm separate or distanced from or unworthy of that which is the divine. Not once. Because the mystic then understands that whatever is available for me is happening for me. It's a part of the spiraling up. You know, they used to say that jewelers used to refine precious stones in the rough, and they would put them both in a velvet bag. And they would put the rough stones in there together, and they would shake them, and they would rub them really, really hard. And all of that friction, when they would open the velvet bag, it would come out, and the polished stone would be there. And I feel like we're that. You know, to be a mystic means that in my roughness, I'm inside the velvet bag of creation. And sometimes I'm being shooken. I'm being shookened. And sometimes I'm being rubbed. And sometimes, you know, my roughness and Jean's roughness are just rubbing up against each other. And what happens from that, the product of that, is something beautiful. Because there's no condemnation in the experience of being in the velvet bag. It's the understanding that I'm being refined. Look at that. Listen to that. The temporary setback isn't punishment, it's refinement. The mass illusion of what happens within the arena around the world and global upset isn't an absence of that which is God. It's refinement. It's something that has been called forth. You understand chaos theory, right? Chaos theory says chaos must happen in order for a new birth to be able to present itself. There must be the shedding. There must be the letting go. And so now living in this ordinary world with all of its complexity, even sometimes with its sadness, is a beautiful thing. Because everything, hear me, everything speaks about life. Illness speaks about life. Sadness speaks about life. The seeming friction speaks about life to those who are mystic. That's what being mindful is. That's what you and I are called to do, to be, to honor. If you really want to honor Memorial Day, I saw a statement that said, we must die before we die in order to live. You really want to honor those who have come before us? Then learn to die before you die so that you can truly live. You get that, right? That's the best way that we can honor those lives that have come before us, is to lay down the petty grievance, is to get about the business of action. You want to heal the planet? You want to see the planet healed? Don't wait for somebody else to do it. You shout out to that, I'm available, if that's a value of yours. If health is a value of yours, shout out, I'm available. If love is a value of yours, shout out, I'm available. If your self-evolution is a value of yours, shout out, I'm available. Whatever it is that is your value system, it is time to shout out, I'm available. And as I said, watch out. Because your world, the world that you know today, will change. But the bigger question is are you ready for that? Are you willing for that? Are you open for that? And if so, then so it is. And so it shall be.
Hi, I'm David Ault, and I simply want to say thanks. Thanks for taking the time to watch our broadcast here at Spiritual Living Center of Atlanta. We have a vision, and that vision is to reawaken all to their spiritual magnificence. And one of the ways that we are able to do that is through this very medium of broadcasting. So if you got anything out of this, if you felt in any way inspired, or if something spoke to you directly, then I extend an invitation to you to become a part of our family by donating. And there are many ways in order for you to be able to do that. One is to simply go to our website at slca.com, and there you will find all different kinds of prompts that will help you support what it is that we are doing here in Atlanta. One way is to become a pledger. That means that you decide on a monthly basis that you are going to help us with this vision. Another way is to donate through our management system called Fellowship One, another through PayPal, and another even easier way is on your cell phone. You can do what's called text to tithe, and that number is 796-7030. Again, thank you so much for your support, and I invite you to come back weekly to see what it is that we're up to. Blessings.